Welcome to another episode of Automotive Insiders. I'm your host, Jason Stein. Great to have you back listening on this platform. Tooling sits at the heart of the automotive industry. Every launch, every program, every vehicle depends on it. Yet this critical sector faces one of its toughest challenges: rising costs, global competition, supply chain strain, and the constant need for skilled labor. To help us understand where tooling stands today and where it's headed, we're joined by Laurie Harbour, partner at Wipfli, LLP, and one of the most respected experts in this space. Laurie has spent her career advising suppliers on competitiveness, forecasting, and navigating industry change, and she'll be sharing insights at the upcoming MEMA Wipfli 2025 Tooling and Supply Update on October 23rd in Livonia, Michigan. In this conversation, Laurie explains the state of the tooling industry, the biggest challenges that suppliers face, the opportunities ahead, and why collaboration across the supply chain has never been more important. That conversation begins right now on Automotive Insiders. Laurie, welcome back into the program. Great to have you on again.
Thanks for having me, Jason. It's great to be here.
How would you describe the current state of the automotive tooling industry? We have a lot of ground to cover as it relates to that. But give me kind of your overview. Where are we on the tooling industry in general?
It's been a very difficult 3 to 5 years, honestly, since COVID. And it wasn't as much COVID driven as it was just product development driven, right? We launched a lot of product from 2015 to 2020, and that created a lot of tooling demand. And then we kind of reset to go and make investments into battery electric vehicles. And so that put a bit of a pause on as much tooling activity as we were used to seeing in the back half of the last decade. So it's been slow. And of course, now with all of the uncertainty of, tariffs and what's going on in the EV world, we've just kind of slowed programs down. So it's impacted our tool suppliers quite a bit.
And I know there are some critical issues that are in front of the industry right now. A number of them: rising costs, labor shortages, supply chain strain. Let's walk through each one of those, if you don't mind. Where are we on labor costs, or labor shortages rather, and rising costs?
Of course, in this market in the U.S., as we know, it's been a difficult, task to get a lot of the younger generation excited about manufacturing. Tool and die is quite interesting because they're very well-paying jobs. Some of these tool makers make six-figure incomes. But with the demand being so down, people have sort of slowed at getting, new people on board. Now, that said, it's a very significant skilled trade. So we still have trade schools that are developing these people, but still very difficult to get people excited about going into manufacturing. And costs continue to rise as it relates to wages. As we adjust with the economy, we're seeing wages go up, but at a declining rate as they might have been in 22 and 23.
At the same time, global competition is continuing to pressure many shops in North America, correct?
Right. So the industry of, low cost country tooling, whether that's China or India or Taiwan or, some of those other low cost regions, have really put a big strain on our market here. Now, some of the tariff situations helping that right now, right? So we have a fairly significant tool tariff, about 45% on dies and molds. And then there's a 50% tariff on the steel and aluminum portion of that, and another 10% on non-steel content. So it averages 70 to 80%, depending on the size of the tool and the amount of material content. So it's a fairly sizable tariff. Will it stay in place? No one knows, but that's the current situation, which is helping for some of that tooling to come here. But that's still a very competitive market.
Yeah, not to mention, you referenced it earlier, but EV programs that are shifting. We talk about that a lot in this program, the pendulum that has now swung yet again firmly the other way, but also
Right.
tighter launch schedules. How are some of these challenges, or I guess how would tooling suppliers be adapting to some of these challenges?
The biggest challenge with a tool shop would be lead time, right? So if we get tighter timelines on programs launching, we need better lead time from tool makers. And that's really what we're going to talk about in our upcoming MEMA event is how can tool suppliers better position themselves against the global competition, right? We may never have wage rates that are comparable to China, but we have the ability to improve lead times and the actual cost to build a tool. In other words, reduction of hours to build a tool so that we can get the gap closer, right? And then that tariff can play the difference in some of that gap. So we need for tool makers to work on the things they can control and do better in building tools in less time and less hours.
Capital investment pressures are so huge. How
Mm.
are shops balancing what is known as modernization, I guess, with margins that are so thin?
Yeah, it's a great question because we're seeing capital expenditures kind of cut in half from 24 to 25 because of the uncertainty of, if I put this machine coming from Japan on a boat, will it hit a tariff while it's on the boat? And, so there's a lot of uncertainty, a lot of reduced margins. So, there's a lot of tool suppliers who've invested considerably over the last several years. So they have the equipment, they have capacity. Now we need that demand to return so that they can utilize it. The utilization of some of our tool shops is, below 70% these days. So there's opportunity, but there will be less spending in the next 12 to 24 months.
And let's talk about the next 12 to 24 months. What trends or maybe opportunities do you see shaping that time frame, Laurie?
The first big thing that's coming in that time frame is we've got all of our US built pickup trucks, the Ram, the General Motors trucks, the Ford trucks, all being turned over to a new product, right? So at some point over the next 24 months, we're going to see them be sourced to tool shops with launches to the public out in 27 and 28. So the good thing about this is when those trucks go to the market, that's a lot of tooling. I mean, it's billions of dollars of tooling that will help our tool makers to win a bunch of that work and fill their shops up for a period of time. Additionally, again, there are some tool shops today that are winning from some of this tariff discussion, and some of it is the extra cost, but some of it is also the big companies saying, "Look, let's make our tools closer to home. It's just too uncertain when we have to bring it over on a boat, and let's just try to get them closer." So we're seeing some reshoring by choice and some by financial, metrics. And so those companies who are positioned well, and I'm telling my tool suppliers, price competitively. Now I don't mean give it away, but just because the rest of the world is increasing their prices doesn't necessarily mean we have to increase our prices. We should be competitive. That's how we win it, prove our capability, and then sustain it long term.
And I know you believe there are a lot of opportunities for collaboration and consolidation across the supply chain. Elaborate on that for me, if you would.
Yeah, there's a discussion going on around the tariff and trade issue that affects even our dialogue with Canada. And I'll be honest with you, the North American tool industry needs the US, Canada, and Mexico. We have a lot of mold capacity in Canada, and we have less so here in the US, but we have more die capacity to build here, stamping die capacity than we do in Canada. So I would love to see USMCA create a free trade environment within the three of our countries so that we can leverage each other where we need capacity. So if somebody in the US wins a big tool package, how do we partner with our peers in Canada? I know not everybody loves that, but the common enemy here is low cost country tooling. It's not our North American tool base, and we need each other. So leveraging that, working with partners, people who support us in buying steel and making manifolds and components for tools, that partnership is critical for us to rejuvenate our North American tool industry and really be successful and sustainable.
And I know you believe that there's a real need for forward looking forecasting and really
Mhm.
better planning between OEMs and their suppliers, correct?
That's absolutely correct. We need more. It's been very quiet the last couple of years because people didn't know if they were going to launch programs or they were going to delay them, and that takes it inside in terms of communication. And we're not as transparent with our tier ones, our tier twos, or our tool suppliers. And so, when the tool supplier is truly at the bottom of the food chain in the supply chain, right? So they tend to find out last. So the more transparency, the more working together, and we need our American manufacturers here, meaning when I say American, what I mean is our OEMs, our Hondas, Toyotas, Nissans, BMWs, GM, Ford, and Chrysler, to buy tools where they make the product. The more we can get Honda and Toyota and BMW and others to commit to our tool suppliers here, even at 25 to 50% of the capital, we rejuvenate this industry, we have the technical capability to support them, and then it becomes an ongoing sustainable industry, regardless of tariffs.
A recent MEMA study found that supplier executives are more pessimistic than they have been since the 2008-09 financial crisis, except maybe for one quarter in 2020. This all falls in line with what you're saying, right, Laurie? I mean, there is a pessimism out there that the supply chain has got to find some solutions, even if they're just working together.
Absolutely. It's a pessimism of current volume levels, but it's also the economy and the average consumer's ability to buy a car, right? They're very expensive in today's environment. So adding tariff costs to that on top of, interest rates and the things going on in our economy. So I unfortunately think things stay a little slow for the next 12 to 18 months. And will they return? Of course they will return. And the question is when and how quickly do we, get sustainability? We have clients that are down 10 to 40% in volume, and that's a lot in today's market.
Why should industry leaders attend the MEMA Wipfli Tooling and Supply Update on October 23rd?
It's a great event for the automotive industry in general. I know we call it the tooling event because we tend to talk a lot about what's the forecast and what do we see in the marketplace. But Joe McCabe from AFS is going to talk a lot about the automotive forecast in general. Kara Walton from our team will talk about the economy and tariff and trade and what's happening and what the impact is, not just on tool suppliers, but on production suppliers as well. So it really, the core of it is, how do we use the tooling industry to be a reflection of automotive moving forward? What products are coming? What excitement we're seeing down the path? But also what's going on in the automotive industry in general. So we have a great lineup of speakers that will help, whether you're in tooling or engineering or purchasing, but also a senior level executive at a tier one. There's a lot of packed in information about the industry during that day.
October 23rd in Livonia, Michigan. Laurie, thanks so much for being on the program. I appreciate all of your insights, and we'll look forward to the event later on next month.
Thank you so much for having me, Jason. Take care.
Thanks again for listening to this episode of Automotive Insiders, and thank you to my guest, Laurie Harbour, partner at Wipfli, LLP. Don't forget the MEMA Wipfli 2025 Tooling and Supply Update on October 23rd is in Livonia, Michigan. Thanks again for listening to this episode of Automotive Insiders on this platform. My name's Jason Stein. We'll see you again soon.